Peace and Black Power. Welcome back. This is Daryl D, Daryl D TV. Hey, another comic video, and today I want to show you my top 10 Black Power comic books from my collection. And the selection that I'm going to show you is selected based solely off of the covers. These are covers that jumped out at me, that really kind of grabbed me and gave me that whole, black is beautiful, black liberation, black power um, imagery, and in essence, if you will. So let's get right into it. We're going to start off strong and hard. This first comic is one of my favorites from my childhood. Um, we got Black Lightning. This is issue number 1. And this was like the most incredible book I remember having as a kid. The most incredible superhero. Somebody that looked like me. This was DC's first African American, black, whatever you want to call it, superhero that had their own book, starred in their own book. Not the first black superhero, but the first black superhero that they had in their own solo comic book. So big ups to DC for that. Um, Man, this I just remember as a kid his outfit just being like the coolest thing, um, the coolest costume that I had ever seen, and you can see he's getting the best of the powers that be. This unfortunately, I think Black Lightning only went about, I think it was 11 issues, something like that, 11 or 12. It wasn't a very long run, but they had some of the craziest covers. I couldn't find my number 4 that had Superman on the cover. That was about to get busy, but Superman was trying to accuse him of something that he was obviously innocent of. So he was gonna get the business in. A few more cool covers that really jumped out at me. This is probably my favorite cover of the Black Lightning run. This one was issue number 3. And let's show one more. This one was issue number 6. And he's just doing this thing. This was like he was a teacher who had these powers to create and control and manipulate electricity and whatnot, and he used that to protect his neighborhood and went on to protect the world uh, after protecting his neighborhood, if you will. So, yeah, Black Lightning, that's issue number 1. That's the first one I want to show you guys. Love that book. Second one I want to show you is a new book. This is Harriet Tubman, Demon Slayer. This is issue number 1. What I love about this book is, at first when I first saw it, I thought, Harriet Tubman, Demon Slayer, what do you got her, she's killing, I'm thinking it's like a horror book or a monster book or whatever. I was like, it's Harriet Tubman. If anything, she should be slaying the opposers, the colonizers, the oppressors. Then I found out that's exactly what she's doing. So what you have here, in a nutshell, is a lot of white oppressors, and they happen to be like zombies or vampires or something like that. So when people shoot them or whatever, they come back to life. So it's like, I don't know what vampires, what is it? Stab them in the heart or shoot them with a silver bullet, something like that. That she's doing uh, which is an effective way of actually taking them out. So I read the first chapter. I think they're up to issue number 5 right now, and I read the first book. I'm sorry, and I loved it. I love the story. I'm definitely gonna follow this entire run, and it takes place back in her day, which is fitting for the whole storyline and everything. But this is a great read, brand new. Pick it up. I am really enjoying it so far. Now the next one, this is a very special one. A buddy of mine gifted this to me several years ago. This is a book. This is on Moonstone Comics. This is a brother, Hispanic brother by the name of Eric Esquivel. And from what I understand, he is from Tucson, Arizona, right next door to me. This is the Blackest Terror. Take a good look at that cover. It is self-explanatory. Now this one, we got to crack this one open because this one is quite interesting. Unfortunately, this is just a one-off. This is just a one-off story. When did this come out? 2011, I believe this was. And basically, you have this guy here. He's a doctor. And he is financing out of his own pocket, just trying to medically take care of low-income people or poor people in the inner city. And it's getting really tough for him. He's dealing with all of the things, all of the characteristics of the current events, racism and all of that that's going on. And he's just kind of fed up. So what he does is he decides to go out and he starts taking out the oppressors, vigilante style. And I love vigilante stories, no matter what kind they are. So that's what that's the path that this guy is on. And this book basically is he goes to a TV station and he does an interview. And it's the first time that he goes out in public in that sense, and goes in front of the whole world to give an interview. And from what I can gather, basically this news show is basically what is it? Good Morning America, basically. And I'll tell you why in a second. On some of the opening pages, you see he's sitting down with this reporter guy, and as you can see from his arms being crossed, he's not taking none of that crap that these reporters usually throw at you, trying to patronize you, this, that, and the other thing. And he's just giving this guy the business. So it gets to a point where he just basically says, hey, I'm sick of it. I've had enough. I'm the one out there taking out all of these numbskulls who are coming into my neighborhood, the oppressors, you guys that are successful with your systematic racism. Once he makes his first kill, which is he kills these 3 guys, let me show you something like that, who basically attacked an elderly man, and then he jumps out there and takes him out. And after that first few killings is when he decides to put on the mask and the costume, if you will. So he's doing this interview, and he's really giving it to him. And so he decides he's going to make a bold example of what needs to take place right there on live television. Now here's why I say this is basically a spin-off of Good Morning America, because then he puts all the attention on this guy. And that guy is basically Al Roker, or a version of Al Roker, for obvious reasons. So he basically pulls out his gun, and basically forces this guy, this fake Al, if you will, to really reveal who he really is. He's got an African name. He has all of his customs that he has given away or thrown away, for the sake of fitting into society. Um, Blackest Terror is not having that. So basically, he's giving him the business. Sticks his gun in his mouth. He broke this dude down basically. He basically is telling him, "Hey, you are going to stop selling out and be who you really are. Stop hiding who you are and stand up for yourself and your people." So he gives him a gun and tells him, "You know what you got to do." So our fake Al here takes the gun, points it at the interviewer, the guy we saw earlier, and kablams him. And that's pretty much how the story ends. Man, this is probably the most hardcore Black Power book I would say I have in my collection. The only real crime here is that it was only one issue. So, to my man Eric, brother, I hope there's more of these coming, some way, shape, or fashion. We need at least give us another couple of issues, please. I can really use them myself. This was great, wonderful gift from the homie Paco. Big up to him. The Blackest Terror. You could probably still find this. I'm not sure. It's definitely an indie book and limited released. So yeah, you have to go out and look for that one. Next up, I want to show you, or I thought I'd show you issue number 1 of Django Unchained. Okay, so most of us know all about this character. We've seen the movie, so I won't spend too much time on this one because, most of us are already familiar with this character already. But yes, the comic book is just another version of the movie in comic book form. I'm still missing 1 or 2 issues to complete this run. It wasn't a very long run. I'm not even sure. I think it was maybe 6 issues or something like that. Came out in 2012. I just found out about it maybe a year ago or so. They don't go for a lot. I think I found a few of them in the dollar bin, actually. So, if you're looking for that run, it shouldn't cost you too much money. Haven't even looked in that yet, but I'm looking forward to checking that one out as well. Now, another favorite of mine. This one is called By Any Means Necessary, The Life and Times of Malcolm X. I love everything about this book. This cover art is incredible. The font is super powerful. This is an unauthorized biography. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this came out in 1993. So it's been out there for quite a while. Let's crack this one open. When you're a comic freak like I am, just about anything you can get in comic book form is pretty exciting. I've read the autobiography of Malcolm X probably 5 times now. Seen the movie. I have several of his speeches on vinyl. I see the old footage of his speeches and his interviews on YouTube. So I've seen a lot. And it's one thing to read something in book form and then to actually read it in comic book form with the artwork. And I can remember, I'm an avid reader of the Bible as well. And I remember back in the 90s finding a book. I should have pulled it out. I don't know where it is. But it was about the Elijah. And it was in comic book form and like a mini book. But it was all in comic book form. And that was like the first time I saw something that was originally in just book form, just words, and now I have this comic art to go along with it, and it made reading about and learning about Elijah that much more fun. So of course, when I picked up this Malcolm X book, I was pretty excited. I enjoyed the art right away. You guys know it always starts with the art for me. And I won't go through a whole lot of this, but this is basically a mini version of what happened throughout his life from the time he was a kid and his home was set on fire and his father was murdered and they beat him half to death and then laid his body across the train tracks, and he was, just despicable actions. They were taken away from his mother. His mother went insane, and they were separated and thrown into the foster care system. So they ended up, all of the kids ended up in different parts of the United States. Malcolm was in the streets. He was hustling. Did some prison time, and that, of course, is where he got his start in the Nation of Islam. And then, of course, the ending of the book is Malcolm being murdered by the powers that be. If you're not familiar with this book or his autobiography in general, it is a very, very powerful and emotional story. I actually found a few of these all at once. I believe it was in a dollar box at a local flea market here in town. So that was pretty exciting. But anything Malcolm X wise, I'm grabbing it. You can't go wrong, especially when it comes to not only black history in this country, but history in general in this country. Very powerful man. Okay, next up, someone who is even more powerful than Malcolm X was. If you have any idea who Malcolm X actually was, then you know what I just said is pretty powerful, right? So we're going to go from Malcolm X to my man, Nat Turner. Now, for those who don't know, Nat Turner was an enslaved black man who led the biggest and deadliest rebellion against white people in American history. So, long story short, Nat Turner put together a group of enslaved black people, and they went on a murderous rebellion of their oppressors. In just under 24 hours, they murdered how many? I think it was like 60 some white people, men, women, and children. Everyone that came into their path, they took them out. And just under a day, the people caught wind of what they were doing. They rose up in resistance and they struck back. and Nat and a lot of his comrades had to flee for their lives. A lot of them were caught and murdered on the spot. And you know what's interesting? The ones that were murdered, the slave owners who lost their enslaved black people, actually were compensated by the government for their loss. Yes, they actually received reparations for that. Nat actually evaded capture for, I think it was so many days before they actually caught up with him. And he and a few of the other black enslaved men actually had trials and were obviously sentenced to death because that's what the oppressor does. Um, and as the story goes, Nat ended up being hung. And those that were in attendance at his hanging and the authorities and powers that be were angry because he didn't show any signs of being tortured or resistance. As the story goes, when they hung him, he didn't move, he didn't make a sound, he just hung there until he was dead. And that's how that ended. Um, Very, very powerful. There were a number of rebellions all through those years, not only here in the United States, but in other parts of the world as well. But this is one of the more well known rebellions, and um, Nat Turner was that guy. Big ups to Nat Turner, that's for sure. This is one issue number one of two issues, and what I thought was very interesting was there's no commentary in here, exploratory in here, anything like that. It's all pictures, and as you can see, in every place, it's the same story in every place around the world where you had black people. You had us living in peace, and then you had the invaders come. And with that came a lot of evil, sadistic, murderous actions. And so this is just all pictures. And it just goes on and lets you know the entire story of Nat Turner. So it goes into them fighting back, those who were trying to escape. There were even those who refused to be caught. And so they would end their own lives just so that they wouldn't be enslaved. You had those that were caught. And there were even things like this. Let me show you this so you can get a good idea of what actually was going on back there if you didn't already know. Like, look at this. Look at this sadistic stuff. Chains around the neck. Let's see here. You have the branding. And let's take a look at babies being thrown overboard on the ships and eaten by sharks. So yeah, this is a very, very good a very, very good example of exactly what was going on there. While Nat was soon after he was captured, there was a journalist who came to interview him, and Nat told he spoke freely and outwardly about the rebellion and everything that went into it. And it was only days later that that story came out in different newspapers around the country, and it really gave light to what was going on to everybody. Uh, I mean, to all those all over the country, and later on for us to read exactly what Nat Turner had in mind and what he was doing and how he got to the point that he was. He grew up. he grew up and became a pastor. He was used by different the actual guy who actually owned Nate would rent him out to different churches and pastors, and he would go over there and they would give him what we now know as the slave Bible, to where a lot of the Bible was actually a lot of the scriptures were removed, and the only thing that was left in those Bibles is scriptures that talked about a master and a slave, or like obeying and things of that nature. And of course, white people implemented themselves as the master, even though God is the master, and black people as slaves, which was completely manipulative. So the Nat Turner story is very, very. It's a very, very um, vivid version, I guess you could say, of what actually was going on during that time. And then they later on they made a movie some years back called The Birth of a Nation. There's two movies called A Birth of a Nation, and both of them are worth watching. But the latter one it was basically the Nat Turner story, and definitely worth watching if you can find it, which shouldn't be too hard. It's out there. It's on DVD, and um, I'm sure it's streaming somewhere. So yes, Nat Turner by Kyle Baker. Next one I want to show you. This was I think this came out in the late 60s. This is Martin Luther King and the Montgomery story. The 10-cent cover. This came out in 1957. This was King was still alive when this came out. Let me give you a closer look at that. A group called the Fellowship of Reconciliation actually put this out. The writer was Alfred Hassler, and the guy who did the art was a guy named Cy Barry. And this was okay. It just, excuse me. It basically talked about the marches that went on in Montgomery at the time. They also talk about Harriet Tubman. They tell some of her story in this book. I believe it's only like 16 pages or something like that. They also talk about Gandhi, which, Gandhi hated black people, so we're not giving him any props at all. But it was cool. The only thing, it was just basically this part of King's life and his work, and it really, really pushes on the whole non-violent actions and the so-called results that came from that, which ended up being nothing at all. Even King, in his last years alive, totally abandoned the whole non-violent movement because it just wasn't working. And we weren't getting anywhere with that. But it's a cool book to own. I dig the artwork. This might be the oldest comic book I have, actually. 1957. So yeah, you can't go wrong with King. but I think it's important that we know the whole story. If you really, really want to know the meat and potatoes of Dr. King, study the last 3 to 4 years of his life. It'll tell you everything you need to know. Next up, we have Black Panther. Jungle Action, actually, featuring Black Panther, issue number 21. Now, if you take a look at that cover, nice little up-close look, then that's self-explanatory. We won't get into this because what's happening on the cover is pretty much exactly what's happening inside of the book. So, yeah, we won't spend too much time on that. But that cover is fire, man. That cover is incredible. Once again, these evil devils you see down here with the pointy hats on, Black Panther gets the best of them, as he should. And just for extra credit, issue number 19 has a similar cover, and there's a similar battle going on. So that's another one you can pick up too if you're looking for that kind of stuff. Now, this next book, artwork by J.G. Jones, written by Mark Waid. This is Strange Fruit. This is issue number 1. This is a 4-part miniseries. This is a good one too. Let's crack this one open. I absolutely love the artwork in this book. This was really, really cool. Takes place back in the 20s. And you got your obvious oppression and segregation, mistreatment of black people in the country, black people being treated worse than the trash. Here you have a guy being harassed and they're looking to take him out. And then you see the shot right here. There's like some kind of asteroid or something coming from outer space. It crashes. Over there it crashes. And then it just ends up being, let's get a shot of this. They see like these big, there we go. These big footprints, and they don't quite know what it is. So then you have one evening where you got your Triple K boys going out to have some late night fun. And they go into this field. They chase this guy down. They're getting ready to hang him. And all of a sudden, they come upon this guy. Now, this is the guy that, I don't know if he's an alien, if he's whatever that meteorite or spaceship or whatever that thing was that crashed on Earth, this dude came out of it. And he's a pretty big dude. If you go into some of the other issues, you'll see just how big he is. Big and strong. And of course, these devils shoot and try to do everything, and it has no effect on him. So they take off running, like cowards do. And when they couldn't shoot him, he rips this big tree out of the ground or whatever, swings it at them, hurts a few of them, and they take off running. And like I said, this dude, he don't know what time it is with the clothes. He ain't wearing nothing. So they drop their Confederate flag. So the young guy who he saved picks up the flag, tells him, hey, you can't walk around with no clothes on, you know. So cover yourself up. So check this out. Look what he does with the Confederate flag. He takes it and wraps it around him. And you see this guy says, he goes, yeah, them white folks really ain't gonna like that. So you can kind of see where this story is going. So 4 issues. This is a good book. Cheap. You can find this in a dollar bin too. I bought this when it was new, so I paid full price. What year did this come out? 2015. Yeah, so I bought mine in 2015, but it's not a real expensive book if you want to go and pick it up, if you haven't already picked it up. Okay, last one I want to show you. We're going to go to the world of underground comics. This is my man Richard Grass Green. Put this out in 1971. This is off of Kitchen Sink Comics, and this is called Super Soul Comics, and this is issue number 1. Now, there's not a lot of black comic creators that were in the underground comic scene. Underground comics was a whole different lane. You can go check out some of my underground comic videos or do a little research yourself to see what the whole underground comic thing was about. But for right now, we're going to talk about Super Soul Comics number 1. Now, this was a brother who had returned from the military. He was like a former GI. He comes back home to his neighborhood. It's rampant with crime. Some guys try to jump him, and he basically tosses them around and gives them a tongue lashing about, that's not cool. We as black people need to stick together more, not be fighting against each other. And as the book goes along, it just goes into all of the obvious oppression, all of the singling out of black people, all of the corrupt cops and judicial system, all of the stuff that you've seen and heard about a zillion times. But what I like is it's like a comic book version of a blaxploitation movie. So at very least, this guy over here ends up, I don't recall exactly how, but he ends up having at least some super strength. I don't know if he has any other superpowers, but he's definitely got the muscle to take care of business. And he's a great fighter. So he uses that, and just like, imagine Shaft if Shaft had superpowers. So he's trying to clean up the neighborhood. He's giving it to the man left and right. And then he's got the ladies and all of that, and he's a player and all of that. That's exactly what this book is all about. So it kind of jumps around from him protecting his people, but it's very violent as well. But then he's still got his downtime with the ladies and him being cool and him rolling around the neighborhood, basically showing everybody that he's the man. So I was super excited when I found this book. I don't even remember exactly where I found it. It didn't cost me a whole lot of money, but it's a little on the rare side. You don't see them pop up very often, but I was fortunate enough to find this copy. So yeah, there you have it. Those are 10 of my favorite Black Power comic books that I have from my personal collection, and they were all based off of the covers. The covers were like super cool. Look at that. It's just incredible. And Black Fist all day. And then we got, Mr. Malcolm. I could go on, but I wanted to share that with you guys. And for those of you who are into that kind of stuff, most of this stuff is pretty reasonable if you're gonna look for it. And I have a lot more, but these 10 are probably my 10 favorite out of my entire collection. And yeah, that's about it. There you have it. That's all I got for right now. This is Daryl D. Thank you guys for joining me. We'll see you next time on the Daryl D Show. Daryl D TV all day. Peace and love.